Okay, so I am on an all-day bread making binge today, and while I have got, so last video I did Amish sweetbread, and it is currently rising on its first rise. So I'm taking advantage of the hour that I have in between there to get something else started, and I'm going to make now my Italian bread. This is one that every time I sell, every time I bring out a batch of it to the farmer's market or whatever, I sell out immediately. These are really good breads. They're like French bread, but soft or softer. And they're terrific for lots of different uses. One of my favorites is using them for panini. But I'm going to go ahead and get this process started. This obviously starts the same way as the other bread with the water, sugar, and flour. Water, sugar, and yeast so that the yeast can start proofing. And I'm making a double. So I'm starting out with 2 cups of just like the warmish water. And this one requires 2 teaspoons of sugar, unlike the Amish sweetbread. And then it is going to need a tablespoon and a half of the yeast. And then once I get that in there, I'm going to give it a little bit of time to proof. And then once it's nice and bubbly, I will be adding the rest of the ingredients, which will be, I think, 4 tablespoons of olive oil, and then the flour and salt. So it's actually a really easy one to make. You just proof the yeast, mix in the rest of the ingredients, and then um, obviously you knead it, and I'm just using my KitchenAid to do so. And then you let it do its rise. And then once it rises, instead of using loaf pans like I do with a lot of my other breads, you actually just form it into a loaf and slice the top a little bit. You've seen how pretty they are in the store. And put them on a cookie sheet, and then it'll do another quick rise, and then it'll go into the oven. It is super easy, and I'll show you the whole process. Okay, so my yeast has proofed now, and it's ready for me to go ahead and add the rest of the ingredients for the Italian bread. Now, this isn't a very difficult one. This is super simple. I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of salt. And then I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of olive oil to this one. This is Italian bread, and the olive oil really adds a lot to it. So I've got 4 tablespoons. I've got a 2 tablespoon measure here. So that's my 4 tablespoons of olive oil, and now it is 5 cups of flour. I'm going to throw the first couple in already, and then go ahead and turn on the dough hook and get it to going, and then I will slowly add the rest of it in while it's mixing. I'm also kind of getting ready on some of the other breads that I'm making. The next bread I'm going to be doing is a rosemary olive oil bread. Fantastic bread. It's so good. But so I went out to the greenhouse a while ago, and I trimmed up some rosemary, and I've been in here picking it and getting it ready to cut up for the recipe. So everything smells like rosemary right now. Okay, getting that going. Now we'll put in the 3rd cup. After I get all of the flour in here. Then I'll let it knead for about 5 minutes or so. And once it's fully done, then I'll pull it out, put it into a greased bowl, just like I did my Amish sweetbread, and I will let it sit for about an hour to rise. It should double. Once it's done with that, I'll punch it down and then form up the loaves, and I will show you that process for certain. I mentioned before that, or maybe in my last one, that they're all mixing together today, that a lot of people don't know how easy it is to make homemade bread. But homemade bread is so good. I mean, there's no store-bought bread that can compare to homemade bread at all. And it's so simple. I know that I'm in the kitchen for a while I'm doing this, but in this process, I can make up a whole bunch of stuff, and then we can throw a few loaves in the freezer for later so that we don't have to, do this every single day, which I refuse to do, personally. Okay, I'm about to put in the last cup of flour, but I want to go ahead and push down the sides, make sure everything gets incorporated. You watch it fly up on me again like it did in the last one. Not as bad this time. I'm typically used to it. I'm such a messy cook. I just am. All my food is really good, though. Okay, so I'm going to let that get going. Once it's fully mixed in, I'll continue letting it go, and it will do its kneading. Once it's fully kneaded, then I will go ahead and put it into a grease bowl, let it sit, and might be time. Let's see. I still got 25 more minutes left on the rise of the Amish sweetbread. So I'll be going back and forth, and I'll start my next one too. Okay. So my Italian bread is now kneaded and ready to be put into the greased bowl. Now I just used my olive oil spray again and fully greased the bowl. And now I'm going to be pulling out the dough. There we go. So it's out. I'm going to just kind of push it into a bowl. I'm going to kind of roll it around in the oil so that the whole thing is kind of coated. And a lot of the recipes say to put a dampened towel over it. I like to throw a little plastic wrap just lightly over the top and then put a towel over it. So I'm just going to kind of place this over. I don't like my towels. Sometimes as it rises, the towels will kind of stick to it and makes it linty. But that is the original ball ready to go. And then I am going to take this towel. I'm going to kind of dampen it just a little bit, and I am going to put it over the top. And then I'm going to set it up there with the other and wait for it to rise. I'm going to give it an hour, and it should come to double. And then I'll show you guys what we do when we punch it down and then form it out into the loaves that it will become. Okay, so now my Italian bread has risen, and it is ready to punch down and to form into the loaves in which it will bake. So I'm going to do the whole punching thing. And since I did a double, it'll make 2 loaves. So I'm going to pull it out here, throw a little flour on my slab, And I'm going to just go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and divide it right now in half. And then, since this is just going to be like a one of those big long ones, like kind of like what people know of as French bread, what I tend to do is kind of pull it. I don't like to overwork it, but I like to pull it until it is around 12 inches. And let me see if I can show you this. I kind of pull it around like this so that it's smooth on the top and there is a seam in the back. And go ahead and get a little bit of oil put on the pan. We're good there. And this is just straight up olive oil. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and get my first loaf laid out there. And then go ahead and move on to the second one. Same thing, I'm just going to kind of pull everything smooth on the top and pull the seam around to the back. Get it to about the same size and get it over here. Now the last thing that I'm going to do to it, grab a knife. Last thing that I'm going to do to it is I am going to just make like 2 or 3 cuts in the top of it. Just little diagonal cuts. And it just kind of cuts the very top. And then as it rises again and then cooks, it makes that nice little separation. It's very pretty. But that's my Italian bread. What I'm going to do, I'm going to cover it again and let it rise again for like its second rise for about 20 minutes. And then it'll go into the oven, cooks for about 20 minutes. And once it's done, I'll set it out on a cooling rack and let it fully cool. And then it'll be, I'll be able to slice it up for whatever, for panini, or we can use it, throw some garlic butter on it and use it for spaghetti and that kind of thing. And this one will be done soon. And then my next one coming up, you'll have to stick around for. That's my rosemary olive oil bread, and it is phenomenal. I'm not kidding you. But I'll show you this when it comes out of the oven. And the last thing that I do to it, once it comes out of the oven, is I put melted butter over the top of it. You can do that by taking a slice of butter and rubbing it in while it's really warm, or you can just melt butter and take one of these things and brush it in. But it does help. It kind of saturates that and makes it super buttery and soft, and it's really, really yummy. Okay, I just took my Italian bread out of the oven, and it is ready to go onto the cooling racks. And what I'm going to do, doesn't it look yummy? It's nice and golden brown, and if you tap it right now, it feels hard and it kind of sounds hollow. But what I like to do is take some butter and go over the top of it, and that really makes a difference in the outer shell. I personally like soft bread. I like to have occasionally a nice dense crust, but I certainly like to have my bread to be soft. And this butter really helps with that. And it also helps with the just a nice buttery flavor that it adds to it. So I'll go ahead and get that butter on there, and then I'm going to go ahead and take it off and put it on the cooling rack. I already took my Amish sweetbread out, and it's over there cooling. My boys have already been in here asking if they can have some. So it's a big deal in this house. Okay. Nice and buttery. That should make the outer shell really nice and soft and yummy. So I got those. Show you here. I got those on here. Here's my Italian bread. Here's my Amish sweetbread, and I still have yet to bake the rosemary Italian, rosemary olive oil bread. You're going to be able to see all three of those videos hopefully sometime tonight. So you guys tune in, be sure and subscribe, be sure and get the notifications because there's going to be a whole lot more coming. In fact, here in a bit, I'm going to be doing my homemade chicken strips and my homemade fried squash and fried okra. Don't want to miss that.